Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to episode 300 of the Falcoholic Live. I'm your host, Kevin. I have Falcoholic Kevin, joined by friend of the show, officially Joe Patrick. He is at JAPatrick200 on the Twitters. Joe, welcome back to the program. I know, guys, like Mark Ramundi had to pull out. Okay, I got the next best thing. Okay, no, sorry. We got big time by ESPN. No, I'm just kidding. Mark had something come up, but I knew that Joe would be ready to go to give us high quality analysis from Flowery Branch as well. So Joe, thanks for coming in on short notice. And how are you doing tonight?
I'm great. I did not realize this was the 300th episode. I guess am I in the 300 club now or something? Is there do I get a T-shirt for this? But,
it's like everybody pulled out. Adnan's not here. Mark bailed on me, so it's just us old heads here now at this point. That are going to be carrying the torch here for episode 300, but that's okay because we got a great show for you guys. Joe, thanks again for coming on, guys. Thanks for joining us here on episode 300. We got a lot to get to, obviously. If you haven't had your fill of talk about week one, don't, too bad, because we're probably going to talk about that some more, but we'll try to move the record forward a little bit to get some more, talk about week two and can the Falcons offense rebound realistically? And the answer to that is probably yes, but can they do it against the Eagles, who may be an even worse matchup for an immobile quarterback if that is the case? So we'll definitely get into that. Definitely a lot to talk about as we sort of break down this inauspicious start to the 2024 season for the Falcons. The good news is we got 16 more games, so can't get much worse than that, right? Shouldn't say that, but anyway, guys, real quick before we dive in, I want to bring you a word from our sponsor, BetOnline, folks. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. BetOnline's got every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads that you can bet on during the games. Yeah, don't bet on the Falcons, especially not this week. Bet on the Eagles if you want to bet on anything. Probably, number of sacks, if that's a prop, probably high. To Kirk's credit, he did dirt the ball a couple times on what would have been sure sacks. So, that is his thing. He doesn't take a ton of sacks. Now, that was probably when he could move a little bit better. But either way, probably avoid the Falcons, but plenty of other teams to bet on. You got 31 other teams to choose from. You could do it all at BetOnline. And if you think you know your stuff, BetOnline's got a new $200,000 mega contest. They've also got a pick five against the spread every week. They've got weekly prizes, and you can claim your share of that $200K. And when the game's over, you can head on over to BetOnline's online casino. They've got online blackjack, online poker, and over 150 slots games that you can peruse. So what are you waiting for, folks? Head to that website, BetOnline, today to get in on the action. Just make sure when you sign up to use our promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV. And they've got, I know they're in the midst of rotating their sign-up specials, so I don't want to say the wrong one, but you definitely get some kind of bonus for using the promo code, and it helps us out. So no reason not to put that in if you're making a new account. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right. Joe, we've been talking, behind the scenes about this. Yeah. And I've spent a lot of time over the past, I did an All-22 review. I sat down with Trayshawn, which if you guys haven't seen that, it's a good show to check out as well. And obviously the immediate post-game reaction. But curious, now we've had a little bit more time to digest it. I know you have as well. What do you think the biggest takeaway from week one? Are you more concerned about Kirk Cousins and his health and his play, or are you more concerned about sort of the offensive philosophy that was on display on Sunday?
Yeah, obviously the answer is both. I think for everybody, it's some combination of both. And it's like a spectrum of how much of each do you kind of attribute to the performance. And, I do kind of come down more on the side of the game plan. But again, it's they do go hand in hand to an extent. When your quarterback cannot really move that far off of his spot, you've got to try to work your way around that in some creative ways, or try to find some creative ways. There wasn't a whole lot of creativity that happened in the game, therefore, however. So it's hard to really pinpoint exactly where the problems were. I'm with you, Kevin. I went back and watched the game. And I actually, instead of watching the All-22, I watched the condensed game a couple of times the next morning. And then I actually went back and just watched the full game, the broadcast version of it, because when you're in the press box, I should have had the game going to hear what the commentators were saying. I wish I had, because I would have had some better questions to ask, and I'm definitely gonna do that in the future post game. because Greg Olson was really picking up on a lot of the interesting and odd looking Falcons offense with the pistol usage in particular. But it was interesting to watch the full game because I felt like I actually did feel better about some things. Like the first drive was pretty good. Again, there was a turnover worthy throw in there, but you got away with it. And the team moved the ball down the field. The team obviously moved the ball down the field again on that second to last drive. And when I got done with the game, I was thinking, and it really does come down to turnovers in this league. And Raheem Moore has been saying that, since the post-game presser and again on Monday, which is that when you lose the turnover battle 3-0, you don't deserve to win. In fact, you would have to pull something out of your butt really to win those kinds of games. So, but then again, the turnovers were kind of created by these factors that we're talking about that went into this wacky game plan. And I think from the looks of it, it looks like Kirk was kind of adjusting a little bit to the speed of the game. Again, he's just not familiar with really anything. He talked about that in his introductory press conference when he first came in. It was like, listen, I have no relationship with, the guys on this team who I'm going to be throwing the ball to. We need to build those relationships. We need to have time on task. And it felt like a team that was in that situation where you just don't have those kind of built-in solutions to go to in games. And I think that's one of the reasons why we saw them kind of get basically out adjustmented at halftime of this game, where you have a really together defense, a defensive Pittsburgh Steelers defense that's just so together and knows exactly who they are, what they want to be, and how they can change things to affect opposing offenses. And we just did not see Atlanta able to really adjust to that. And so the whole thing ended up in a pretty big mess and a lot different than I think, any of us expected. I've seen Kirk Cousins in training camp run plays from under center. But for whatever reason, they don't want to do that in games at this point. So now he's in an offense, the whole thing about Zac Robinson coming over from the Rams and him learning under Sean McVay and have some familiarity with Kevin O'Connell as well. Them all kind of running a similar version of an offense. And we thought that Kirk Cousins would adapt well to that. And then of course we see him running in an offense where he's gonna run 10 snaps of it in his career. So so maybe things aren't going to be as familiar for him offensively as we may have thought they would have been.
Yeah, I don't really believe that. We know Sean McVay and Kevin O'Connell, they run a similar offense, but they do run it differently. And KOC basically runs his out of under center. That's what he's done. Sean McVay does run more out of the gun. That is true. So I was
especially
expecting
last year, I think.
Yeah.
I think last year they especially went more gun.
Yeah. So it's it's an offense that you can run out of either. But Sean McVay's style is there's more gun. It's not only gun like we saw on Sunday, which again is I don't think this is a Sean McVay versus Kevin O'Connell thing. I think this is this scheme is telling us a lot about Kirk Cousins' health. And if it's not, then I think that opens up even more questions. But one question at a time, we're going to try to answer here. Again, there's nothing inherently wrong with running an offense out of shotgun or pistol or whatever.
Sure, absolutely, I agree.
There's not necessarily a problem with that. I think it's a little bit questionable because Kirk's not familiar with it. So especially, you would want him to be as comfortable as possible, considering all the other things you mentioned, right? The new receivers, new situation, all this stuff. You would probably want to put him in something that's as comfortable as possible. But if the Falcons want this to be a shotgun, they're going to run shotgun or pistol most of the time type of offense, okay, that's fine. I probably wouldn't have gone 100, I think it was 96% shotgun with the only two plays from under center. One was the 4th and 1, and the other one was a
spike,
kill the clock. Yeah. So that's not, the 4th and 1 was a great play call. So maybe that means they should just run under center every play because they have good play calls out of it. But
right.
To me, the weirder thing about it was the no play action at all.
Right.
The Falcons are the only team in the NFL that's not running play action. And I know it's play action's not some solve all problem, thing, but the fact that you don't run it at all is the more concerning thing, because there's no other team that doesn't nobody runs no play action. That's not a thing that people do. So,
that's what's so confounding, because it's not running play action shouldn't really be that related to Kirk Cousins' health. I get like being able to run outside zone from under center and things like that. Like that's difficult. But like pistol and shotgun offenses typically have the most play action, or a lot of times they have a lot of play action because they're slow. You're kind of like setting up zone read kind of looks off the snap so often to try to hold defenders. And there was just none of that. And because the defenders weren't getting held, like from the press box, you could see the linebackers were just jumping up into the run game. And then there was not really receivers open in the passing game either. And, it's like, I don't think the receivers are that bad. Like they're not creating that, like they're not capable of creating separation. I just think that they were entirely too predictable. And like, yeah. I asked Raheem Morris about this in the Monday press conference and just kind of put a couple of these numbers to him. And, he didn't directly address those. In fact, I think he kind of filibustered most of the answer. But the point is, like, I felt awkward just presenting those numbers to him because like you wouldn't even really see like that kind of disparity in like a high school game. Like,
no,
like in fact, like I ran a really crappy offense in high school. And it's like our only successful passing was off of play action because, anyway, we were so run based and everything. But like, yeah, I just didn't understand that. And then also where that kind of hurts this team is the Falcons offensive line is really interesting because they're very good. I do think they're like elite in the league at doing certain things. And especially they're an athletic group who can really get horizontal and run that outside zone really well. But they're just not good at pass protecting on natural dropbacks when there's no play action. That's like statistically one of their weakest areas. And against, a premier pass rusher in TJ Watt, it clearly didn't work. And, the Falcons are going to have more going against some more quality pass rushers here on their schedule. Obviously they got some dangerous ones, some fast guys on the edge for the Eagles coming up this week. They got Micah Parsons later in the year. So they're going to have to find some solutions, to this. And if you were to ask me a week ago, I would have said, oh, yeah, I believe in Zac Robinson to find these solutions. I'm not saying I don't believe in him now, but I have a lot more kind of questions about that.
Yeah, I think there's certainly more concerns because I don't, they did make halftime adjustments, but I think they made the wrong adjustments. I think they were like, we need another pass catcher. We need another route being run. That's what we need is so Kirk has an outlet. And that's like not necessarily bad on its face, but the consequence was now we're going to just have Kyle Pitts chipping instead of having Charlie Werner, actually helping block on the right side. And it's like they kind of made the decision to not add another permanent blocker and to add another route. And I think that was clearly a mistake. The pressure, and the other part of that was like the Steelers figured out the offense by halftime. Like after the Falcons had that one drive that was looking good, but after that drive, the Steelers had it completely figured out. And I know, Joe Schmo's in the chat, like I know he did a full film review as well, and basically they did run screen options instead of play action. But what happened was I think what the Steelers were doing, like the Falcons just checked into that screen too many times, like and it was I think the right call based on the key players and the box count and that sort of thing. But like the Steelers were all over the screens. Like in the second half, like not a single screen worked, and they just charged them every time. And it's like it's just too predictable. Yeah,
I think they sensed, or maybe just even came into the game thinking like I don't know if Kirk is going to be able to push the ball down the field on us, so let's just kind of play underneath on a lot on the interception that he threw to Drake London, intended for Drake London on that backside dig. It's that safety looked like to me he was playing a deep half, but there was nobody really coming into that area, and he kind of intuitively robbed robbed the coverage and just came down, similar to the way Jesse Bates has kind of came away with a couple picks last year. And because they just didn't present that threat to the Steelers. And I think Kirk Cousins is going to have to prove it to teams that he can actually, complete some of those shot plays and push the ball downfield and hurt teams before they kind of come off of this. I think they're going to, similar thing happened last year with Desmond Ridder. I remember it was the Lions game, the third game of the season after the Falcons were 2-0, and the Lions were like, showing no respect to the over-the-top game, and it absolutely worked. It just it crowded the box. It made life difficult for them, and obviously they got smoked in that game. And so that's what has me worried is like this team is going to have to do some things differently and be able to execute some things that I think relieve the pressure that defenses are going to apply against them here in the future based on what they've seen out of this game.
Yeah. No, I think the lack of threatening downfield was obviously a huge part of why the Steelers had so much defensive success in the second half, because once they knew they didn't have to respect the deep ball, they could just, the safeties, you could see it, they would show cover two, and then one of the safeties would just charge the line of scrimmage every single play, and it worked great, and they were able to get some picks off it too, and they would just, they really didn't need to respect it. And the Falcons didn't really call a lot of deep routes either. I mean, there were some clear outs and stuff like that, but for the most part, there wasn't anything.
Not many.
And, I would say there were a couple that could have been the incompletion to Darnell Mooney that got tipped. I thought that actually was a fine decision. And I think actually I didn't have a problem with the throw. I know some people were like, oh, there wasn't enough velocity on it. I think it was, you could probably have better velocity, but I think the velocity was adequate. I think the defender just made a great play on the ball, just getting a tiny piece of it enough to keep Mooney from catching it. But I think if they complete that, Pittsburgh is oh, now we have to back off a little bit, because that would have been a 25-yard completion or something like that. The problem was that was one of the only deep passes they were even able to attempt because of the pressure. And that one, it was an on-target aggressive throw that he had time and he was able to hit it. And that's kind of the story of Kirk Cousins. If you watch this tape last year, when he has time, he's very accurate. If he's pressured, that changes pretty quick. And I think you add to the mix all the stuff, he's just clearly rusty. I think the bad decision-making is just rust. That's the one, I think, if you're looking for signs of immediate encouragement, I think you shouldn't expect Kirk's decision-making to stay like this, long. I think he's going to make better decisions with the football probably immediately. Within the next couple of weeks, he's probably going to cut down on those bad decisions. I think we can be pretty confident in that. But I mean, the lack of movement in the game plan, honestly, the lack of movement in the game plan was more concerning than any actual lack of movement I saw from Cousins, because there were only a handful of plays that Cousins actually left the pocket or avoided pressure. And good things happened on those plays. And honestly, he didn't look like he couldn't move. So the concerning thing is why is the game plan so clearly not asking him to move when it doesn't actually look in terms of being able to actually move around, that there is a problem. I didn't actually see him have problems moving. They just never really asked him to, or even deliberately tried to make sure he didn't move. That's confusing to me.
Yeah, I know. Me too. And I know you have pointed this out in one of the things that you've done, because I've been listening to some of the post game stuff, but also his stance when he's taking the snaps is changed for reasons that you would think would, is kind of based on the Achilles. I know Chase Daniel was talking about this today too. But I don't get the impression that he wouldn't be able to. I don't know. I don't understand. I'm interested to learn more about this tomorrow, because we're scheduled to speak with Kirk. We're scheduled to speak with Zac Robinson. So I hope we can get a lot more answers on some of these things, because they say that he's healthy. They say that he's, here's something Josh Kendall from The Athletic asked Raheem Morris if Kirk can essentially run anything in the offense or something along those lines. That was the question he asked. And I would say Raheem didn't directly answer that specific question. He talked kind of flowery about Kirk Cousins and saying he's done everything we've asked him to do, those kinds of things. But it's not specifically answering the question of can he actually, play from under center, for example? Probably not, honestly. That's the evidence that we have so far, at least. Yeah. But you're right. I've seen him move. We've seen him move even in training camp. He does some things, but I don't know if it's kind of health preservation of just wanting to keep him from suffering hits or something. I don't know. But ultimately, if whatever is kind of limiting him at this point is then hurting the team, if the team is not capable of performing as well as possible because of that, then that raises serious questions. I'm not there yet as to and obviously serious questions about whether he should even be playing at this point or not. I kind of want to get more sample size on this, get a couple more games under our belts before we can really make really determine that. But it's not good. It just feels off. Feels like
the vibes are really bad.
Feels like the veil's kind of been pulled off a little bit on what this Falcons offense is, and obviously the abilities that Kirk in particular has. And there's work to do for this offensive staff to try to figure out, again, just figure out solutions for these things. Because I don't think, based on what we saw, I get the feeling that it's not like going to be a death sentence for this team. I just think they have to figure out ways to put Kirk in the best position to succeed. And I think the play action passing has a role to play.
Yeah. Yeah. And I get that, like, you know, and I do want to make a correction. There was the opposite of what I said about Joe Schmo's comment with the run screen options. They actually didn't run any screens off of those. All the screens they ran were designed, and I think they made the correct call to run on all the run screen options. But I think that made the screens that they called really predictable, and like that was sort of the problem there. But I think, like, yeah, it's just they need, like, it seemed like they wanted to call like the Sean McVay offense where they were going to take shots and do all this stuff, and when they probably should be calling the Kyle Shanahan offense, like, of we're going to run like intermediate at most, and we're going to do quick passing, and we're going to do timing routes, and we're going to just try to get the ball out quickly, efficiently, create space with these routes, but not really do too much like downfield passing. We'll give our guys yards after catch opportunities and so on. And I think that's going to work better for them, because I think Kirk is going to struggle to push the ball deep. Like, the one big concern that I think a lot of people have echoed is that when you saw him try to like plant and drive the ball off of that right leg, you know, the Achilles leg, like, there were velocity issues. You know, it didn't look comfortable. He looked to be grimacing. The velocity just wasn't there. So if you need him to, like, and I think the velocity issues were most prevalent on those throws to the outside. They weren't always there, but I think those were the ones that you saw flutter a bit, and you need those balls to get there as fast as possible. So, you know, that is going to limit what you can do. So you're probably going to have to do, you know, all this over the middle stuff, which, again, you're talking about Kyle Shanahan style offense. You're going to be doing a lot of crossers and digs and in-breaking route stuff. Kirk is good at all that stuff. It's just like, if you're going to throw to the middle, you have to make better decisions with the football. You can't make the decisions he was making on Sunday and get away with throwing inside. So, yeah, I mean, it's just like, it feels very like if they are actually taking like center and play action completely out of the offense because he can't run it and he can't throw deep, that's where I get to my hot take of like, well, if he can't do that and he can't throw deep right now because he can't drive the ball properly, he can't really start, because that is like a quarter of a functional offense at this point. Like, he can throw like short to intermediate over the middle and can't move. It's like that. I mean, that's not enough to build an offense out of. And it's not anything like against Kirk. This is not like I think Penix is a better quarterback than Kirk Cousins. This isn't a take like that. It's like, if we have to cut that much out of the playbook to accommodate Kirk Cousins in his current health status, we're better off having Penix out there, even if he's like much greener and is going to make mistakes. Like, we can't just like cut that much out of the playbook and expect to have success in the NFL.
Yeah.
They're not going to do it, for the record.
I'm with you. Yeah, and I don't think they should at this point. Yeah, like we're just too early. You know, it's one game, is a small sample size. And again, like, I think there were some things that were working decently well in that game. The run game got off to a good start. I really liked how they were just like attacking those flat areas, especially with Bijan on like the swing routes and stuff. Just kind of felt like easy yards. On a lot of those longer drives, it didn't really feel like they were doing anything particularly special, but they were moving the ball down the field. And I think that's a testament to what this offense is capable of, just kind of in the nuts and bolts of it, without really having a dynamic passing attack to speak of. And we hope that can obviously come around. But I also wonder if that could also go the other way, where it's like, now that tape is out on you, opposing defenses can kind of like double down on and really try to expose your weaknesses, and it could get worse. I hope that's not the case, but it's gonna be interesting days ahead. I mean, I don't know what else to say, really. It was just not at all what we were expecting. I think that was like the biggest thing. And it's something we were talking about. I host the Wade Ford tailgate show in the morning that's on from like 4 to 2 hours before kickoff for every game. And what we were talking about was like, whether the team won or lost the game, it was more about the style of play that was put on display that I think was going to either like get fans really excited or have fans, not so much. And before the game, we were all kind of expecting to be really excited by what we saw with, a competent quarterback and this innovative offensive coordinator. And it was on the very other end of that spectrum. And so I think, yeah, people would obviously be feeling a little bit better had they won the game. But ultimately, even if they had, I think there would still be a ton of questions in this respect as to like what this offense is going to be, because that's what we were looking forward to so much. That's why it was going to be. We were hoping, and we still hope, I think, that it's going to be, a top 12 to 10 offense. But clearly they're not on that course. They're not on that trajectory right now. So they're going to have to turn something around.
Yeah. There's a lot of concerns that I think they just made the again, like, I think when you look at everything with the benefit of hindsight, you can say like, well, the idea was that like, we're going to take Charlie Warner off and put Ray McLeod in, because like Ray started to heat up, towards the end of the half. And like their slot corner is the matchup you wanted to target. Like that was what we talked about going into the game. And they were like, well, we think we can just get away with Pitts chipping. And like that didn't work. Like, I mean, and like that, it just didn't work, obviously. But it's like they I don't know if it would have worked better if they actually had taken Pitts off the field, like, and just put Charlie Warner in. I don't know if it would have worked better if they like let Pitts play the slot and do that sort of stuff that Ray McLeod did. Obviously, they're very different. Like Pitts is going to be more of a build-up size option, whereas Ray McLeod's going to be more of that yards after catch, like shifty slot receiver. So they're not really, you can't really call the same exact plays for those guys in that spot. But, I think like if Charlie Warner isn't here to help Caleb McCary in pass pro, like, I mean, he's a great run blocking tight end, don't get me wrong, but like, I think his second most important job should be like Caleb McCary needs help against elite edge rushers. We know this. And like, it's not like it would be one thing if it's like, oh, we have plenty of protection, but like, we're nobody's getting open. We never really got to that point. Like there were definitely plays where guys didn't get open. That's going to happen. But like Kirk Cousins almost never, like, I think his like pressure rate was like astronomical, like 40% or something like that. So like, there were so few times that he even had an opportunity to have a clean pocket that I think just like deciding that actually we need another outlet as opposed to we need to give Kirk more time. I think that was the wrong call. And hopefully like this is a learning experience. Like I think Zac Robinson like made the aggressive decision, which was like, I think Caleb can hold up with the chip from Pitts and we just need to get another quick outlet for him. And like, it just didn't work. Like it didn't work out. They didn't really adjust again after that. I think because the score was so close, they probably felt like if we can just string together another drive, we're in this game. And that's actually true. Like they were never more than one score behind in the entire game. So like they're probably thinking like, we just need to make a couple of little things. We just need to execute better. We just need to score one touchdown. And this game, we could tie this up. And they were absolutely correct. They just couldn't do it. So, I think the game feels a lot worse than it was because it was hella ugly in the second half on offense. But like ultimately they were just one score away, like the whole game. They didn't really, there wasn't a need to panic. It's just like, I would have liked to have seen the strategy work and it didn't, unfortunately. So,
And obviously we've kind of laid out some the issues that we had with the game plan, some of the calls and all that. I do think that some element of the way that Kirk looked, especially in the second half, with kind of looking a little bit skittish and stuff, is kind of natural when you're just getting pressured that much. Like I could definitely see that happening in Minnesota if he were like under the cosh like that. Like we've seen the chaos Kirk, we've seen him make these kinds of bad throws before when he's not in rhythm. When he is in rhythm, he's among the best in the league, and so it's just about finding that. It's about finding that rhythm. And that's something I thought we would, I guess I just thought there would be more kind of rhythmic passing early in the game, not like technically like quick game stuff necessarily, but just stuff to kind of get him flowing, get him feeling confident. And it never really felt like that. Even, again, he had a turnover worthy throw on the first drive, even on the scoring drive. He had that throw that kind of fluttered because he got hit, of course, because like he's getting pressured constantly. So he got away with some throws too, even on some of the successful stuff. So it's one of those games that's just really hard to make a solid evaluation because of how weird it was. And then the second half also, I think this is another thing and kind of something I want to use to give Zac Robinson the benefit of the doubt is just the amount of negative plays that were happening in that second half, and a lot of them penalties and things. They just were not able to get into like a rhythm. And I think as a play caller, you need to kind of get some first downs, string some drives together so you can like string some plays together and try to work things off one another. And if you look at the drive chart of that second half, it was like 3 and outs, just not gaining many yards, just not many opportunities to call plays. They only ran 50 offensive plays in this game, and that includes like a clock and some things like that. So there weren't a ton of options for Zac Robinson to go to in some of these situations. And when you look at third down, for example, I think the team was 2 of 9, and they were 2 for 3 when it was less than 10 yards to go in the third and less than 10. And when it was 3rd and 10 or more, they had 6 of those.
They had so many third and
they were
longs.
0 for 6. Yeah,
it was awful.
You're never going to be successful that way.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. Like that was the other reason I think they got extra criticism, was because they didn't play in the preseason and the offense looked really sloppy. Like, there's no doubt that a lot of these problems were execution related. I mean, one of the turnovers was just a straight up, like, we don't know what the hell we're doing with this motion. Like, and it was on Kirk and on Ross Dwelley. Like, it was on both those guys, because Kirk called for the motion too late. Then he tried to stop him. Ross Dwelley didn't see it. And also, like, I need you to haul ass, Ross, if you're going to come late on that motion. Like, I need you to move, not, like, quietly, like, step across the line. No, your ass needs to haul across the formation if you're going to be running. But, that was obviously a rust-related thing. I think it just didn't look clean at all. Like, it was problematic. So it wasn't clean. There are, like, rust-related stuff isn't that concerning. It sucks that it's impacting your season, and that's why we do see teams play in the preseason. You also risk injury, and clearly Raheem has made it clear they're not going to play guys in the preseason. They think it's not worth the injury risk. Okay, fine. We're going to have to deal with sloppy opening weeks more than likely. And that's just the way it is. But yeah, there were a lot of issues on that particular toner. But like the biggest issue in this game is obviously, they turned the ball over 3 times. The Ross Dwelley one, that's completely random F up. Like, you're not really gonna, I don't know what you do to fix that. I mean, that's just random. Like, you're gonna get those sometimes. It happens in the NFL. The 2 throws, like, the first interception was bad. Kirk did have interior pressure, so he had to get rid of that late. I think if he had another second, he would have been able to get that to Tyler Algier, who was just wide open on his wheel. So like,
that would have been technically the last read. Yeah.
And like, I think if he had time, he probably makes the right read there. He just kind of, and that's Kirk's thing. Like, he tries not to take sacks. He's going to try to dirt that ball if he can, or get it out of bounds or whatever. And he's really good at that, honestly. Like, throughout his career, he doesn't take a lot of sacks. People might be surprised by that, because he is, even when he's healthy, he's not the most mobile quarterback, but he's really good at getting rid of the ball. In this case, I think he just had to accelerate his process, and he's rusty, so he didn't dirt that ball like he should have. He kind of threw it right to the defender. Unfortunate. The other interception, he was technically hit as he threw, so that's part of it, but the decision was not good. Like, the decision was bad. That was going to be between 2 defenders, and with him getting hit, the ball just kind of died in the air, and it was easily picked off. I think Bijan, on this play, Bijan was the dump off, and if he had just dumped it off to Bijan, probably get 7 or 8 yards there, because nobody was covering it. It was late in the game. They were covering deep. So I think, like, there's just no reason to push that ball. It was 1st and 10. I think it was just a bad decision all around. So, again, those are like mental errors that Kirk is not going to probably make very often. Like, that's obviously rust related. So you can hope that that's going to get better quickly, and I think you can have some hope for that. And ultimately, I came away from like watching every throw and actually writing it down, like, not as worried about the velocity as I was upon like a live viewing. I think on the live viewing, it looked worse than it was. I think if you actually go back and watch every snap, it's like his velocity is adequate. Like, it's not impressive velocity, but it's enough that it shouldn't cause problems for your offense. There were a couple cases where maybe like the yards after catch was a little bit limited on some of these throws or whatever, because they had to wait an extra half second for the ball to get there. Maybe that could have resulted in a big play if you get it a little bit earlier or whatever. But like, I feel like that, like, given the context of this game, that's probably a little bit nitpicky. So like, I don't feel like the velocity is on the short to intermediate area throws is a big enough problem. Some of the stuff way outside in that 15 to 20 yard range, you could see the ball flutter a bit. That's not what you want. Hopefully he can improve that quickly. But if he can't like get this ball past 25 yards or whatever in the air, like teams are going to figure that out really fast, and it's going to make the run game so much harder to execute. And I don't think that's something that they can afford. I think they need to at least like threaten something to keep the box from being stacked on every single play.
Yeah. Like something I was like dying to see by the end of that game, and I knew I wasn't going to see it because they were exclusively in pistol at that point. But it's like you were desperate to see like like a play action shot play basically. Like I just wanted to see the field stretch, but like a deep crosser with a deep post, like a Yankee concept or something like that with some max protect. Like I just wanted to see him be able to like sit in the pocket calmly with like plenty of protection and see what he could deliver from that kind of posture. And just never saw it. He was basically under threat the entire game. And he's probably never going to be super successful when it's like that, but especially in this context, with it being the first game on a new team with new coaches, new players, new teammates, and coming off the injury, of course. So, again, I think that's the biggest solution they got to figure out, is just getting him some consistent pass protection, really, which is what this offensive line has tended to struggle with. And, it's because one of the reasons why is because you have kind of a weak link there in Caleb McGarry in pass protection. He's great in the run game, but you have to have some ways to help him. And I do wonder if this is just like Zac Robinson is just not fully familiar. This is like really the first time he gets actual feedback on some of his players with being tested against real competition. And so hopefully he can make adjustments that can help him the next time they're in this situation.
Yeah, and I think like McGarry's like biggest problem is like he can't do a damn thing against elite edge rushers. Like he's hopeless. Against like most edge rushers, he's usually okay. Like he's okay at worst. Like he's gonna win some and lose some. Against like we've seen this time after time. Against like the really good edge rushers, he is hopeless. Like he's I mean and to his credit, like in the run game, he actually pancaked TJ Watt a few times. Like they probably should have run the ball and get on TJ Watt a little bit more because I think because it became too predictable. They basically ran everything to the left when they could. So like I don't think like they did run once. They ran to the right one time and TJ Watt blew it up, but it's like you gotta go back to the well. Like you can't let him intimidate you like that. Like put him in the dirt. McGarry was pancaking him sometimes. Like you gotta like let him get some wins in. You gotta slow down the rush. You can't. And again, I think that's like new offensive play caller type stuff. Like it probably needed to diversify a little bit with where they were running the football. Obviously, I think I guarantee you the plan wasn't to run out of the pistol 81% of the time and throw out a gun like 99%. I guarantee that was not the plan. That it just sort of happened that way. Like, and they probably looked back after the game and were like, "Oh my god, I can't believe I did that."
Yeah,
like,
I know, right?
It's just like one of those things where like it doesn't seem bad until you look at it on paper.
And I also think one of the reasons why the numbers out of the gun, they ultimately were quite lopsided, being 100% pass, but they were doing a lot of empty more than, I mean, I know that it's kind of become trendy to do that around the league. Arthur Smith started to do it a lot last year. But they were doing a lot more than I anticipated against this Pittsburgh front for that exact reason. So that just boosts those numbers, like obviously you're not going to run it out of empty. So
yeah, exactly. And I think like one thing, like you mentioned empty, like I think part of the reason they went to empty so much last year is because Bijan was really struggling with his pass pro. In this game, I think we saw him hit some really good blocks. Like I think it's clear that he spent a lot of time working on his pass protection, and I think he like graded out as like technically the Falcons' highest graded pass blocker or something like that.
Wow.
Which is, obviously it's not the same for the running back versus the offensive line, but like, I think that was one thing, like that was one of the only blemishes on his game last year. I was like, he was not as good of a pass blocker as we hoped, because he was a good pass blocker in college. It was not an issue for him, but the NFL is a different game. It seems like hopefully like he's kind of figured that out. So there's no reason to take him off the field on third downs. But like, I know we all were asking for like Bijan to get like all the carries. I don't know that like I was expecting it to be like Algier gets one carry. Like I was like, that might be like even too much, but I mean, fantasy owners are going to be happy, but I don't think anything with regards to Bijan was problematic. I think I would have liked to seen more like more run game diversity. I do wonder if that's also like still a work in progress. Like they're still working on getting the stuff in. I was hoping we'd see more like man gap concepts. I don't really think we saw any of that yet. Because I think that's worked out really well for Shanahan's offense. worked out really well for the Rams last year. And like while the Falcons are definitely like more of an athletic offensive line, it's not like they're small, especially Bergeron. Bergeron's huge. He's like 320.
Yeah.
And so like I think Jake Matthews is probably the most finesse of any of the guys, but like, I mean, you're mostly going to be asking your interior guys to do crap like in that game. So like, I hope that we do get some more run game diversity, because I think like they're very good at outside zone. There's no question about that. But I would love to see some more stuff there in the run game.
And I actually liked what we saw in the screen game too. I like that there was intention to go there. And I think that, again, when we're talking about not running out of gun, obviously it's true, but when they were going empty, they were trying to set up their screen game, I think, quite a bit. And, so is that a pass play? Yeah, technically, but you're getting a playmaker out in space in a very low risk kind of way, similar to how you might do on an outside run. So there is, there's some benefit of the doubt towards Zac there. I feel like I keep on, when I talk about this game, I'm like just trying to find things. It's like, where like what can we build upon, or like where can we kind of like cut them some slack and whatnot, because that game was just so weird. Just haven't seen a game played offensively like that from this Falcons team really since I've been covering them for the last 2 years.
Yeah. I mean, I look back, like there were also just a lot of missed opportunities in this one. Like I know I wrote down like on like the fourth throw of the game, Cousins had to like dirt the ball. But if he has like another second, McLeod's coming open in the back of the end zone for a touchdown. So it's like, man, that sucks. There was
the touchdown to Pitts was really nice. It was like a full field progression, went all the way across, and basically
perfect play call.
Found his last read. Yep.
Yeah, tight end flood against that zone defense that they were playing. Nobody there for Pitts. Like it was perfect. Like I love to see that. I think like on I can't remember. I think it was like the fifth or sixth throw of the game. It was a screen to Bijan, and like if London like can just hold his block for like another half second, there's a chance Bijan scores on that. And he just a little execution error. And that's the thing with the screen game. Like if someone whiffs on their block, it blows up the whole play. And if they hold their block, it could be a touchdown. So it's like you just it's really reliant on guys doing what they're supposed to be doing. And I think there was another screen that went for 8 yards where Bergeron doesn't whiff on his block. That's probably like a 15-yard play or something like that. And like with Bijan, it's like you never know, like because he could just dodge the safety with like some of his craziness, and then it's a touchdown. So it's like you never know. Like if he gets past that defender that got an easy grab on him, that could be a much bigger play. So it's just like I think there were a lot of close calls, like a lot of things where if you make the right read or you have a little bit more protection, I think that, the Falcons could have scored multiple touchdowns in this. It's just like, this is the NFL. Like the windows are small, the opportunities are rare, and it's unforgiving. If somebody whiffs or someone makes a mistake, that touchdown is not happening. So, and like you said, like, and especially in the second half, they got a lot sloppier, I feel like, with the penalties. I was I couldn't believe this was real. I had to go back and like double check it multiple times. Kirk Cousins only had one passing attempt in the third quarter that counted. I think there were actually like two or three that I think two of them were called back by penalty or something like that. But only one passing attempt that counted in the entire third quarter for Kirk Cousins. That's obviously not ideal, and that doesn't really have anything to do with Kirk Cousins being bad or something like that. That's just like we can't have penalties wiping out our drives. So yeah, I mean, this kind of leads into like our closing topic and sort of the title of the show, which is like, can we like expect this offense to rebound against the Eagles? Because I think Pittsburgh's defense definitely has a claim to being like a top 5 defense. It pretty much is every year. The Eagles last year were much more sketchy against the pass. They gave up almost 30 points to the Packers, so it's not like they were an elite defense last week, but they did get a lot of pressure on Jordan Love. So what do you think about this matchup? I mean, it looks kind of scary on paper. I think that they're like less sound from top to bottom than Pittsburgh is, but you got to go on the road to Philly, which is arguably, if not one of the hardest places in the NFL to play.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously not easy. It's not going to be an easy game. That's why they're nearly touchdown underdogs. And yeah, I mean, like this Eagles defense, like they didn't perform as well as they would have wanted to against Green Bay, and that kind of worries me when a team feels like they have something to prove. Obviously, the Falcons do as well offensively, but coming back home for your home opener when you played like that. And, I thought that, at least if you look at the PFF grades, it's like, Jalen Carter was like one of the worst players for them. I don't think he's a bad player, like I think that he's going to have a massive, play a massive factor in this game, especially he might have a point to prove going against Falcons. Who knows? But it's, yeah, obviously a difficult situation. I do think that there's an opportunity for this offense to look a lot better and for them to soothe a lot of the concerns that we've been talking about on the show today. Just again, to the point that you were just making, if they just execute on some things better and don't lose the turnover battle like they did, I think that we can walk away thinking a lot differently about this team and this offense. But like I said, do I expect that to actually happen and result in a win? Probably no. Like that would be, you'd be foolish to think, just expect that to be the case. It's going to be difficult.
Yeah, no question. And like, I think they can rebound on offense and have us leaving that game feeling better and not win. Again, like this Eagles team beat the Packers. They put up like 30 something points. Like, yeah, this is a much harder test for this defense. And I think the defense did just about everything they could, considering they were -3 in turnover margin and all this stuff. And like had to I mean, I really want to like hammer this home. Like the run defense held up against like 40 plus carries. And like that's really impressive. And I think that speaks to the depth they have on the defensive line. Like this is something that no one would ever think was a thing here in Atlanta. Like they were able to keep the defense. It wasn't always great, but they kept Pittsburgh under 4 yards a carry on 40 plus carries with Pittsburgh trying to salt the game away. They gave the Falcons offense like at least 2 chances late in that game to try to tie it. Like, and the offense couldn't do it. But
and I liked what we saw. Obviously, Grady kind of took the headlines because he's making his return. He obviously has this statistically really productive day, but I really liked. I thought Eddie Goldman provided something in the middle for this team. I thought that Zach Harrison looked really good when he got opportunities. Just kind of that long arms that Raheem Morris loves, with some mobility in there at that position as well. You're right. Like I mean. Yeah, I think that this run defense is going to be good. It's going to be tested, of course, against Saquon Barkley and what looked like, one of the more effective running games in the NFL last week for the Eagles. But you got to like what you see. And Nate Landman, such a good run defending linebacker. It's almost like it's been interesting to see. He's almost like a specialty linebacker role.
Over the pile. Oh that was
incredible.
I was out on this game. And when he did that, I was back in. I was like, okay, let's go. Yeah. He's
got like these like really natural instincts for the position, and just like as like a football player, he's just he's fun to watch. But I thought it was interesting to see the way that the team was rotating him and Troy out, like kind of like we thought they would based on their specialties. But and they both proved to be really well. I think Nate Landman was the number 1 rated player for the team, and Troy Anderson was 3rd on PFF grades. So good there. I'm interested to see just how they kind of stand up to this test from the Eagles.
Yeah. I mean, I think the pass defense, I'm scared of that. I think Terrell's not going to be as bad as he was in this game, and like even as bad, quote unquote. Like he didn't allow a 100-yard receiver. The Falcons allowed like less than 150 passing yards. So it's like bad is subjective. Obviously, you expect more from your number 1 corner, but this is a much tougher. Test. It's like much tougher.
Pittsburgh's passing game was just so limited with Justin Fields, and I credit Arthur Smith for doing a good job, just like kind of keeping him out of trouble, not making him do too much. The reads were really simple, especially in the second half. They were just kind of getting him on the edge with boots, and he had really simple reads, or he was running it, if not. Obviously, Jalen Hurts is, a much higher level quarterback than him, but I also feel like at the same time, this is an opportunity for these safeties to potentially create some plays against Jalen Hurts. I think that he has like a propensity to, kind of do something like what we saw from Kirk Cousins, just an errant decision or something, just kind of putting the ball at risk. And we saw him do that against the Packers. And I think it's an opportunity for this defensive backfield, which it's hard. They're not the strength of the team, but I do feel like they're kind of the X factor for this defense, because they have that kind of game-changing potential with the opportunity to take away the ball with the 2 safeties they've got.
Yeah, I agree. We didn't and again, because of how limited the Pitt passing game was, they weren't really calling much that would have Justin Fields play the ball in harm's way. I mean, he barely threw the ball over the middle at all. And then, I think what a lot of people need to realize about the pass rush, like, you don't pass rush Justin Fields or Jalen Hurts like you pass rush Kirk Cousins or a pocket passer. You can't just pin your ears back and go ham on the guy. Like, as people are like, oh, Matt Judon looks so slow. He can't just charge the pocket every play. Like, you have to maintain your rush lanes. You usually have to have a guy kind of like sitting there, like waiting in case the quarterback tries to run. Like, you can't play it the same way. Like, you have to, and that's part of the benefit of being a running quarterback, is teams have to respect that you can just take off and run that thing. They can't just run a bunch of stuff. Like we saw it. The Falcons tried to stunt with Jarrett early in the game, and Fields was like, I'll take that, and just ran right through the hole where Jarrett vacated. So you don't expect like the pass rush to just light up the scoreboard against a running quarterback. Like, you have to be more careful and you have to play more contain. That doesn't mean you can't get pressure. And the Falcons did get pressure. They had 2.5 sacks or whatever it was. So it's like, and they had decent pressure numbers, but I know people were expecting more against the Steelers' offensive line, which was kind of ramshackle, but that was the game plan. Like, they didn't really ask Fields to sit back there, and they ran the ball a ton. They really didn't, and it's like what the Falcons should have done. They did what the Falcons should have done, with a worse offensive line. But it is what it is there. It's a tough situation. But I don't really think the Falcons pass rush was problematic. I mean, I know some people were hoping they would just wipe Justin Fields off the face of the planet, but
it seems like specific with Fields specifically, the book on him is to just, you don't rush him. You just drop into coverage and and let him throw you the ball.
Yep. And then, your pass rushers, if they do get through, they're going to sack him. You don't really have to send extra pressure because he's not great at actually avoiding, you would think a guy as athletic as him would be better at getting rid of the ball, but he just takes sacks, man. I think every one of his sacks, I was like, wow, you couldn't get rid of that ball. So
I hate to say, in the first half, I texted a friend. I was like, man, just watching Justin Fields in person, I actually get less impressed watching him in person just because I don't know, on TV, you can see the athleticism and things. And when you're there when you're there in person, it's just like you can see receivers open. He's just not even looking their way. But it's obviously not going to be the case. I think you got to expect Jalen Hurts to be able to capitalize on some of those moments.
No, you should be more afraid of Jalen Hurts. And Jalen Hurts didn't have a great game last week. But the thing about Jalen Hurts is if he's on, he's on, and you're going to have a bad time. And he can have some off games. So I guess we're praying for that. But he doesn't have as many off games at home. So, the short story is the Falcons are going to have to put up points, I think, to have a chance at this one.
For sure.
And the Eagles' run defense is not as good as the Steelers. That's obvious. So if the Falcons can, the Falcons' best thing is to probably just do what they did last week, just a lot better. Do short passing, get the pressure off Kirk as much as you can, short to intermediate throws, timing routes as much as you can, run the hell out of the ball. Let Bijan try to take this thing over and just limit the Eagles' possessions. Basically do what the Steelers did to you and just do it to them. Because if the Eagles get extra possessions, they can put this game away fast. Because that offense is so dangerous, it's terrifying, honestly. So you can't give them extra opportunities. That's for sure.
Just this doesn't really mean anything, but it was interesting to watch these two teams play on Sunday because the plays were so different. It felt like the Falcons plays were over in 2 seconds. The plays were so quick. And Justin Fields on the other hand is doing these rollouts, buying time, all this stuff. It's just complete opposite styles.
Yeah. I do think that despite the harder opponent and being on the road, I think we're going to see the offense look cleaner. I don't know how many more points that's going to translate to. That's just that's part of this schedule, and I think that's what we tried to tell people before the season. It's if they beat the Steelers, they're going to start 0-3, and it's going to cause a panic. And everyone will be well, 0-3 teams have only made the playoffs, X number of times. That stat, yeah, it's true, but that stat doesn't necessarily take into account that there's an extra game now, and there's an extra playoff team. True. So it doesn't really quantify those two things super well. Obviously, you don't want to be in that situation, and we'll hope that they aren't in that situation. I just think it's unrealistic to expect them to not be 0-3 at this point. So, when you take into context the whole Falcons season, I would say like this team has a much better chance to make the playoffs after starting 0-3 than probably almost any other team in history because of the aforementioned like schedule differences, right? There's an extra game, there's an extra playoff spot, and the schedule is the easiest in the NFL after this first 3 games. So like
it's crazy.
So like, you know, it you have to take all that context into account. It's probably not as bad as the stats would tell you. It still sucks. It still sucks to watch as fans. It still sucks to talk about.
Nobody
like,
feel any better.
Yeah, but like, you know, it's probably not over after 0-3. Now, if they lose to the Saints in week 4, then we could talk about it being over. But, you know, I think we're just going to have to weather the storm now. And hopefully they can lose with dignity over the next 2 weeks. Maybe even look good or competitive in those games. Like if they lose to the Eagles by like less than a score and lose to the Chiefs by less than a score, I don't think we're like feeling too bad about that. Like if you switch the result, if it's 18-10 like Falcons winning that game, and then they lose the next 2 close, everyone's probably fine with that. But because they blew this first game, and they did it in the fashion that they did, you know, it's going to be a dark timeline. But
and if they get to 0-3, I mean, it's like, then I think, you know, Raheem Morris is tested too as the leader of the team. It's like, like you're great, you're charismatic and everything when in training camp, and like when you're talking about what you're going to be in the off season and stuff. But what about when the chips are kind of, deck stacked against you here? How are you able to lead the team through that? Not thinking that I'm not assuming that he's going to be bad or anything, but it's just like, you find out more about your leadership qualities in those moments.
Yeah, I'd rather be 0-3 and finish 6-0 than 3-0 and finish 0-6. I mean, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But
I mean, this team started 2-0 last year and beat the Packers.
Yeah, there's always too much importance placed on the first month of the season.
Yeah,
like think about the Dolphins.
Yeah,
Dolphins blow the doors off the NFL every September, and in December they're just like, wow, we're not doing this, are we? So this is like slim, hope, I guess. But that's all I got at this point. We need this team to look better, or else this is all the platitudes I got for you guys. But Joe, appreciate you tonight. Tons of fun as always, guys. He's at Joe Patrick at JPatrick200 on the Twitters. Anything else you want to plug before we sign off, Joe?
Nope, I got to run out of here. But thank you for having me on, Kevin. Number 300. I can't believe it.
300. Yeah. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate you.
All right. Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it, man.
Yep. All right, guys. Hi. You get to see me twice now. Wonder if my solo thing is working. Yeah, it is. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Guys, appreciate everyone. I forgot Solaire's comment from earlier. My bad, Solaire. Solaire with the $3 says, congrats on episode 300. Thank you, Solaire. Says, I cannot believe we've been watching for 7 years now. I know, it's crazy. Troll bait incoming. Okay, you guys have been warned. Troll bait's here. The game plan would not happen under Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniels. Just saying. Draft takes, here we go. Yeah, well, I think there's no doubt about it. I don't know that the game plan Josh McDaniels came up with would have been any better, but it definitely would have been different. That's for sure. So, yeah. No, thank you, though. So I really appreciate that. Guys, thank you so much for joining us here on episode 300. We're going to do the celebration more like next week, with Adnan here. Hoping to have Mark back. Get well soon, buddy. And, we're going to do the special stuff I talked about. We're going to have some fun. We'll do that on 301 because, honestly, this isn't really episode 300. I mean, we've had, all the post-game shows and everything else. We can kind of fudge it a little bit. But, yeah. Thank you, guys. Tough start to the season, no doubt. Hang in there with us. We're going to get through this. I think that we're going to have to weather this tough month. Hopefully October will be better. And we'll finish strong. That's all I got. That's all I got on the positivity front. But in truth, I did a Twitter thread about it. We also talked about it a bit on Tuesday's show. But watching, I don't think Kirk is as limited as the scheme sort of made him look. I think the big problem is I don't know how much he can drive the ball off of that right leg. But in terms of his accuracy and velocity on throws over the middle and stuff like that, it wasn't that problematic. And honestly, when he had to move, it wasn't that scary looking. So hopefully they can take the training wheels off. Hopefully they can make this better. But we got to see. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already. Leave that 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. Join the community Discord server. Check out our Patreons, patreon.com/Falcoholic Live if you want to support the show. If you're more of a video enjoyer, if you're here, you probably are, I guess. Then you should check out the YouTube channel memberships. Shout out to everyone joining us there. Get some early access to the recorded videos, stuff like that. Definitely check that out. But yeah, thank you guys so much. It makes it a lot easier to get through the season with you guys here to commiserate with. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with us tonight. We'll see you next time. We'll have a game preview coming up, previewing Falcons Eagles. Still trying to get a guest. Not sure if we will or not, but either way, we'll have a show, of course. And then we will have a nice long weekend to enjoy our football. And then, of course, Monday Night Football against the Philadelphia Eagles in Philly. Could be a rough one. Could be an encouraging one. I guess we'll see. But until then, guys, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin. Check out thefalcoholic.com. Thanks again to BetOnline for sponsoring the show. We'll see you next time. Have a great night, folks.